Sa nama je predsjedavajuća Holandske kompenzacijske komisije Potočari. Govorimo o veoma važnoj temi za sve žrtve genocida u Srebrenici i njihove porodice. Hi Silvia, nice to meet you and thank you for coming here.
Nice to meet you.
The Netherlands Compensation Commission Potočari is actually the independent administrator of the Srebrenica civil law settlement agreement. What is this settlement about and for whom?
Well, it's a settlement agreement. It's a civil settlement agreement, and it is a follow-up of a ruling of the Dutch Supreme Court. And they gave that ruling in 2019. And the ruling said that the Dutch state is liable for 10% of the damages the victims who were at the compound of Dutchbed in Potočari on the late afternoon of the 13th of July 1995. So the Dutch state is liable and to these victims, but they were killed. So their near relatives have a right to compensation.
Surviving relatives of the deceased male refugees can submit their application at the Netherlands Compensation Commission as of 15 June 2021. How many applications did you receive so far?
So we are functioning now 4 months almost, and we received 600 applications. And from these 600, we already awarded 130 applications, and 70 surviving relatives have already got their compensation.
The settlement covers only the men and boys who were sent away from the Dutch compound by the Dutch soldiers in the late afternoon of 13 July 1995. Why does the Netherlands Compensation Commission Potočari only compensate these men and boys who were sent away?
Well, we are bound to the ruling of the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said the Dutch state is only liable for that what happened at the compound in Potočari. And there were a lot of men, a lot of women, a lot of children, and there were men, about 350 men, but there were, in total, there were 5,000 persons in the compound, at the compound. For these about 350 men, there is liability, only for these men.
Why does the Netherlands not compensate the family members of the thousands of people who were killed in Srebrenica genocide?
There were killed thousands of people, but we have to make a distinction between the compound of Dutchbed and the people who were there and all the other people. There were a lot of people outside the compound. There were a lot of people, a lot of men walking to Tuzla. There were a lot of men in the mountains. But our Supreme Court said the Dutch state is only liable for the men who were at the compound on July 13th, 1995, late in the afternoon.
How can a country be liable for 10% of the damages suffered by the surviving relatives of the deceased refugees?
Well, that's again what our Supreme Court said. It's not full damage you get compensated for, but only 10% of all the damages.
Family members of this particular group of victims must plausibly show that the victim was in Dutchbed compound or in the safe or are of Dutch bed in the afternoon of 13 July 1995.
Yes. So they have to submit their claim, they have to apply, and we have easy forms for that to apply, and they need identity papers so that we can see that the person that applies is really the person who wrote on the forms we have, and they need some other documents. They have to be a near relative. So a child has to produce a birth certificate. A widow has to produce a marriage certificate. So we know there is a near relationship between the victim and the relative.
A number of these applications will be rejected by NCCP. Why?
Why? Yeah, because the victims were not at the compound of Dutch bed in Potocari. They were not at that time, the late afternoon of the 13th of July 1995, at the compound in Potocari. They were elsewhere. And there are a lot of victims, but we have to make a distinction because of the ruling of the Supreme Court.
How can a committee from the Netherlands judge who did or did not stay in the compound on the day in the question after 26 years?
It's difficult. It's difficult for us. It has been difficult for the Supreme Court. But they read a lot about what happened in Srebrenica and in Potocari. And they saw films, and we saw films, and we have been there. We have been there yesterday to see with our own eyes where did it happen all? What is the compound? And what is outside the compound?
Can a commission avoid mistakes in its judgment?
We really hope that we don't make mistakes, and we will be very careful in making decisions so that no mistakes are made. But it is really difficult.
What is the procedure if a deceased person's name is not on the one of your lists?
Well, we know there are a lot of known victims. In Potocari, in 1995, on the 12th and 13th of July, a list was made up of the men who were at the compound. There are other lists. We got a list of the mothers of Srebrenica. It's a good list, and we used it. There are later lists of the Red Cross, for instance, and we compared all these lists. So we have a list of known victims, about 250 persons, and it's plausible that they were at the compound. But we know there are more. Some of the men refused to be registered. So we know there are men that were on a compound but were not registered. And we have to find out who are these unknown victims. And if we get an application of a near relative of an unknown victim, then we ask for more proof.
How can a witness be plausible and credible after 26 years?
That's difficult because they have to, a witness has to go back into his or her memory 26 years ago, has to go back to terrible events, to a horrible situation where they were in. But we'd like to know and to get detailed information about where were you? Were you at the compound of Dutchbed in the late afternoon of the 13th of July 1995? So it's information about the location, it's information about the time, and information about the situation.
But then why are you saddling people with that burden?
It's sad that we have to ask people, if we get an application regarding an unknown victim, then we have to ask for more information, because we want to make a right decision and don't make mistakes. So we have to have more information and we have to assess this information. These are witness proofs.
The opening of your office was delayed. The cause was a difference of opinion with the mothers of Srebrenica. What was that difference?
We had a very good meeting yesterday with the associations of the mothers of Srebrenica. And we appreciate and respect the work the mothers did. There was a difference of opinion, but it was a difference of opinion between the Dutch state and the mothers. And we are an independent committee, and it's not our business, but the difference has been solved. And we will keep in touch with the mothers of Srebrenica.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you for everything you do. This is very important. And thank you in the name of all the Bosnian people.
Thank you.